You probably think you know Edinburgh. The castle on volcanic rock, the cobblestoned closes of the Royal Mile, the festival crowds that flood the city every August. The ghosts, said, to haunt the underground vaults beneath South Bridge. You know the postcard version. But there is something hiding in plain sight in this city. Something most visitors walk right past on their way to the castle or the whiskey experience. Edinburgh invented food, not just a dish or two, not just a regional variation on something someone else thought of first, but genuinely original creations that left this one ancient Scottish city and spread across the world. Some of them you have been eating your entire life, without knowing they came from a grey city built on a volcano. In today's video, we are counting down 10 foods that were invented in Edinburgh, and by the time we reach number 1, you will never look at your kitchen cupboard the same way again. Stay with us all the way to the end, because the story behind number 1 is one of the most extraordinary accidents in culinary history. 10. Edinburgh fog. Let us start with something most people outside Scotland have never heard of, and that is a genuine shame. Because Edinburgh fog is one of the most elegant desserts ever assembled from simple ingredients. Whipped cream, toasted almonds, crumbled biscuits, a splash of drumby liqueur, a touch of vanilla and almond essence folded together into something simultaneously light and rich, airy and indulgent. It is a dessert that does not announce itself loudly. It arrives quietly and refuses to leave your memory. The name itself is the first story worth telling. In the 19th century, Edinburgh had a problem, hemmed in by its ancient defensive wall on one side and the Norloch on the other. The city could not spread outward, so it grew upward. Tenements rose to 11, 12, even 13 stories, packed with people burning coal in every room to survive the brutal Scottish winters. The smoke from thousands of coal hearths, mixed with the smell drifting up from the Norloch, which served as the city's unofficial dumping ground for waste of every imaginable kind, creating an atmospheric soup so dense and foul that the city earned its famous nickname, Auld Reekie, which translates from Scots as Old Smoky. Robert Louis Stevenson, who grew up in Edinburgh and spent his childhood battling respiratory illness in those heavy, coal-stained streets, complained bitterly about the city's air in his writings. It was this thick, obscuring, gray-yellow smog that gave the dessert its name. Edinburgh fog was created to evoke, in the most affectionate and ironic way possible, the atmospheric conditions that defined the city for centuries. The dessert is the opposite of what the name suggests. It is pale and clean and delicate where the original fog was dark and heavy. That contrast between the grim reality of the name and the luxurious pleasure of what you are eating is very Edinburgh. This is a city that has always been able to laugh at itself, while simultaneously taking itself completely seriously. The original recipe, recorded by food writer F. Marion McNeill, used ratafia biscuits, small, almond-flavored cookies common in Scottish households. Contemporary versions substitute macaroon biscuits or almond shortbread, and the drambuie can be replaced with Scotch whiskey, depending on preference. But the essential character of the dish, cream and crunch and a quiet kick of spirit, remains intact across the centuries. 9. Scottish tablet. Anyone who grew up in Scotland knows the experience of encountering Scottish tablet for the first time. You expect fudge. Your brain sees a pale, crumbly square of something sugary and files it automatically under fudge. Then, you put it in your mouth and everything turns out to be wrong. Tablet is not fudge. Tablet is its own thing entirely. It is harder than fudge, more brittle, with a crystalline grain that crumbles between your teeth and dissolves into a rush of intensely sweet, buttery, caramel richness that has no precise equivalent anywhere else in the world of confectionery. The recipe is deceptively simple: sugar, condensed milk, and butter cooked together in a heavy pot, stirred with patience until the mixture reaches exactly the right temperature, then beaten as it cools to encourage that distinctive grain to form, poured into a tray and left to set. The simplicity of the ingredient list masks the skill required. Too little heat, and the tablet never firms. Too much, and it turns hard and gritty instead of crystalline and melt in the mouth. Every experienced tablet maker has their own instincts about when the mixture is ready. The earliest recorded recipe appears in the household book of Lady Grizzel Bailey, a remarkable document produced in the early 18th century by an Edinburgh woman of considerable standing. Lady Grizzel Bailey was a celebrated figure in Scottish society, a poet and loyalist who had helped hide her father from government forces as a teenager, carrying food to him while he hid in a churchyard vault. Her household book, published by the Scottish History Society, documented life in Edinburgh's aristocratic households with meticulous detail. Her early tablet recipe was modest, just sugar and cream, but the fundamental principle was already there. Over the following centuries, as condensed milk became available and butter grew more accessible, the recipe evolved into the version Scottish grandmothers have been making ever since, still sold in tartan-decorated tins to tourists who buy it, intending to share and then eat the entire thing on the train home. 8. Cranachan. If Scottish tablet is the nation's favorite sweet that nobody outside Scotland quite understands, Cranachan is the dessert that everybody who has tasted it immediately recognizes as exactly right. It is one of those rare dishes that feels inevitable, as though the combination of toasted oatmeal and fresh raspberries and cream and whiskey and honey was simply waiting to be assembled rather than invented. Cranachan has an older cousin called crowdy, a traditional Scottish breakfast in which soft crowdy cheese was combined with lightly toasted oatmeal, local honey, and sometimes cream. When raspberries came into season in August, they were added to this mixture. And somewhere in Scottish food history, this harvest celebration evolved into the dessert we know today. The whiskey arrived later as Scotland's national spirit became more widely available across all levels of society. The result is a dessert deeply connected to Scotland's agricultural calendar. Cranachan was created specifically to celebrate the raspberry harvest. There is something almost ritualistic about the traditional way of serving it, each ingredient brought to the table separately, so that every person assembles their own dessert according to their preferences. More oatmeal for crunch, more whiskey for warmth, more raspberries for brightness. That democratic approach, the sense that the recipe belongs to everyone at the table rather than being handed down from the kitchen already complete, feels entirely appropriate for a dish born from communal harvest celebration. Today, Cranachan appears on the menu of virtually every restaurant in Edinburgh that serves traditional Scottish food, and it has been called, with justification, the uncontested king of Scottish desserts. 7. Shortbread. Shortbread is one of those dishes where several different claims of origin compete loudly with one another. What is clear is that Scotland is where shortbread as we understand it today was refined, developed, and made famous, and that Edinburgh sits at the center of that story. The path began in medieval Scotland with something called biscuit bread, a twice-baked bread dried in the oven after its first baking to produce a hard, long-lasting biscuit. Over time, the yeast that gave this bread its rise was replaced with butter, transforming the texture entirely into something shorter, crumblier, and richer. The term shortbread refers to this quality. The high butter content makes the dough short, meaning tender and crumbling rather than chewy. The popular association with Mary, Queen of Scots, who is said to have been particularly fond of triangular shortbread wedges, called petticoat tails, helped elevate shortbread from everyday baking to something with genuine royal prestige. What is beyond dispute is that Edinburgh became the home of shortbread's commercial development. Walker's, the family business producing shortbread since the 1890s, is one of the most recognized Scottish food exports in the world. The Shortbread House of Edinburgh supplies five-star hotels and prestigious food emporiums from Fortnum and Mason in London to Harvey Nichols in Edinburgh itself. Shortbread went from a luxury reserved for weddings and hogmanay celebrations to the most internationally recognized Scottish food product in existence. And the road from medieval biscuit bread to the iconic tartan tin ran directly through Edinburgh. 6. The Scotch Pie. You could spend a long afternoon in Edinburgh, eating nothing but Scotch pies from different bakers, and emerge genuinely satisfied. The Scotch pie is one of the great unsung achievements of British food. A double-crusted hot water pastry case with a raised lip around the top, filled traditionally with minced mutton, seasoned with a closely guarded combination of spices, in which pepper always plays a prominent role. Baked until the pastry is firm and golden. It is food designed to be eaten standing up, in all weathers, without apology. The hot water pastry that forms the case is itself a small miracle of practical engineering. Unlike short crust pastry, made with cold fat, hot water pastry is made by melting fat into boiling water and mixing this hot liquid into the flour. The result is a pliable dough that can be shaped by hand into the characteristic straight-sided, freestanding case that sets firm during baking. Every baker in Edinburgh has their own version, and the Portobello Market on the first Saturday of every month has become an unofficial Scotch pie testing ground, where different producers bring their versions for the public to judge. The spice blend, the ratio of lean meat to fat, the thickness of the pastry, all debated with the seriousness other cultures reserve for fine wine. 5. Cock-a-Leekie Soup. The name alone is worth several minutes of quiet appreciation. Cock-a-Leekie is the kind of name that could only have survived from a completely self-confident food culture, one that felt no need to dress up a simple dish in fancy language. The dish is what it sounds like. A chicken slow-cooked with leeks in a broth that is deceptively plain-looking until you taste it, at which point you understand immediately why it has been a staple of Scottish cooking for centuries. The earliest recorded references to cock-a-leekie appear in Scottish documents from the 16th century, and, by the 17th century, it was firmly established as a dish associated specifically with Edinburgh and the Scottish court. It was served at a banquet in Edinburgh in 1598, and by the 18th century, it appeared in Scottish cookbooks with the matter-of-factness of a dish that has already proved itself. What makes cock-a-leekie particularly interesting is the occasional addition of prunes to the broth. This sounds alarming to the modern palate conditioned to keep sweet and savory separate, but the prunes dissolve slowly into the liquid during long cooking, adding a depth that is not identifiable as sweet, so much as complete, the kind of background note that makes you keep reaching for another spoonful without being able to articulate exactly why. Some recipes include the prunes, some omit them. The debate has never been resolved. 4. Edinburgh Rock. We have arrived at one of the great accidental inventions in the history of confectionery, and the story behind it is so perfectly constructed that you would suspect it of being apocryphal. In the case of Edinburgh Rock, it almost certainly is partly legend, which is to say that the broad outlines are true, and the specific details have been polished by retelling into something more story than fact. It does not matter. The result is real enough. Alexander Ferguson was born in Down, Perthshire, in 1798, and from his earliest years, he had one consuming passion: making sweets. His father, taking the pragmatic view that confectionery was no foundation for a respectable life, attempted to redirect his son toward joinery. Alexander was not interested. He left home and found work with a confectioner in Glasgow, learning the trade before eventually settling in Edinburgh, where he set up premises at Melbourne Place in the Old Town. Sweetie Sandy, as he became known, made his name producing boiled sugar confections and medicated sweets popular with the city's residents. Then, somewhere around 1836 or 1837, Ferguson made what is described as the most productive mistake in Scottish food history. He forgot about a tray of sweets, left them sitting at room temperature, unwrapped for weeks or months, while his attention was elsewhere. When he rediscovered them, they had transformed. The moisture had left the candy, and in leaving had changed the texture entirely. Where before there had been conventional sugar confectionery, there was now a soft, crumbly, powdery, melt-in-the-mouth creation unlike anything else in any sweet shop. Ferguson recognized he had found something new. He refined the accidental process into a deliberate technique, building the drying stage into his recipe as an essential step. The result was Edinburgh Rock. Pale, pastel-colored sticks of candy flavored with peppermint, ginger, raspberry, or vanilla, with a texture quite unlike the hard, glossy seaside rock associated with English coastal towns. Edinburgh Rock does not shatter. It crumbles, it dissolves, it disappears gently, rather than requiring effort from your teeth. The success of Edinburgh Rock made Ferguson wealthy enough to retire to his hometown, where he reportedly continued distributing sweets generously to local children until his death in 1871. Ross's, which has been making Edinburgh Rock since 1880, chose the inaugural Edinburgh Festival in 1947 to launch their version in the now iconic yellow box. The festival brought the world to Edinburgh, and Edinburgh Rock went home in their bags to every corner of the globe. 3. Lorne sausage. You may have encountered this under a different name. If you have ever had a full Scottish breakfast, you have almost certainly met the square sausage, that flat, perfectly square slice of seasoned minced beef that sits on the plate with a geometric precision conventional sausages cannot achieve. Outside Scotland, it is sometimes called sliced sausage or square sausage. In Edinburgh, it is called Lorne sausage, named after either the Marquess of Lorne or the district of Lorne in Argyll, depending on which version of history you prefer. The genius of the Lorne sausage is entirely practical. A conventional cylindrical sausage has a tendency to roll off your plate, roll out of your sandwich, and generally misbehave. The Lorne sausage solves this problem at the foundational level by being a rectangle. It fits perfectly inside a morning roll. It stays exactly where you put it. It heats evenly because every part is the same thickness. It crisps on the flat sides in a way that curved cylindrical sausages simply cannot replicate. Made from minced beef or a combination of beef and pork seasoned with pepper and salt, the mixture is packed into a rectangular mold, set until firm and sliced. No casing, no twisting, no links. Sausage reduced to its absolute essentials, shaped for practical use and honest about what it is. You will not find Lorne sausage easily south of the Scottish border, and in Edinburgh, it is simply part of breakfast. 2. Tatty scones. Every culture that has ever grown potatoes has eventually figured out what to do with leftover mashed potato. Scotland has tatty scones, and the Scottish solution may be the most satisfying of all. Tatty scones are not scones in the sense a visitor from elsewhere might expect. They contain no cream, no fruit, no raising agent. A tatty scone is a flat, thin, roughly triangular cake made from mashed potato, mixed with a small amount of flour and a pinch of salt, cooked directly on a dry griddle until golden brown on both sides. The potato gives them a softness and moisture that no flour-based scone can replicate, and the griddle gives them a slightly crisp surface that contrasts with the tender interior. They appear on the full Scottish breakfast as naturally as they appear in the refrigerator the morning after a dinner with potatoes. They can be eaten hot with butter melting into their surface, filled with sausage or egg, and eaten as a sandwich, or reheated in a pan alongside sausages, soaking up the fat and becoming something even richer than they started. The tatty scone represents something important about Edinburgh and Scottish cooking more generally. A deep and instinctive commitment to using everything and wasting nothing. Scotland's climate meant that frugality was not optional. The potato was one of the most reliable crops in difficult Scottish growing conditions, and anything that extended its usefulness was genuinely wise. The tatty scone is practicality transformed into something delicious, which is perhaps the most Edinburgh thing imaginable. 1. The Scotch Egg. And here we are. Number 1. The most argued about origin story on this entire list. The food that Edinburgh and London have been quietly disputing credit for across the centuries. The creation that has conquered picnic baskets and gastropub menus and school lunchboxes across the English-speaking world and beyond. The Scotch Egg. A hard-boiled egg encased in seasoned sausage meat, rolled in breadcrumbs, and fried until the coating is golden and crisp. and the sausage meat within is cooked through, savory, firmly embracing its perfectly cooked treasure. The London claim centers on Fortnum and Mason, the legendary Piccadilly food hall, operating since 1707. The claim is that Fortnum and Mason invented the Scotch Egg in 1738 as a traveling food for wealthy customers who needed sustenance on long coach journeys. It is a good story, and Fortnum and Mason tells it with confidence. The Edinburgh claim is older, messier, and considerably more interesting. Scotland has a long tradition of sausage making that predates any English commercial food hall, and the combination of egg and meat is documented in Scottish food history before the London claim takes shape. The word Scotch in Scottish cooking historically referred to methods of preparation associated with Scotland, and this linguistic connection suggests that the creation, wherever it was refined commercially, has Scottish roots running deeper than a single invention date. What is beyond dispute is that the Scotch egg, in its modern form, is one of the most technically satisfying objects in British food. Getting it right requires attention to three distinct cooking challenges simultaneously. The egg must be cooked precisely, firm enough to hold its shape, but with a yolk that has not gone grey and chalky at its edges. The sausage meat must be seasoned generously and pressed into an even coating that holds together under the heat of the frying oil. And the breadcrumb coating must be thick enough to provide genuine crunch without overwhelming the delicate flavor of what is inside. Edinburgh's contribution to the Scotch egg story continues today through the city's extraordinary market culture. At Stockbridge Market on Sunday mornings, at the Edinburgh Farmers Market on Castle Terrace, and at Portobello Market, Scotch eggs are made and sold with a seriousness suggesting genuine culinary tradition rather than manufactured nostalgia. The yolk inside might be liquid, the sausage meat flavored with black pudding or haggis or smoked paprika, the breadcrumbs panko or heritage grain. But the fundamental object remains what it always was: an egg surrounded by meat, surrounded by crunch, a self-contained meal you can hold in one hand and eat standing up on a cold Scottish morning. And that is the thread running through all 10 of these Edinburgh inventions. From the Edinburgh fog, named for the city's terrible 19th century air, to the accidental Edinburgh Rock that a distracted confectioner left out too long. From the rigorously practical Lorne sausage to the elegant Cranachan assembled from the ingredients of a Scottish harvest, these foods were created by people paying attention to what was in front of them, who saw value where others saw nothing, who turned limitation into invention and accident into tradition. Edinburgh has been making things from whatever it had available for more than 1,000 years. The castle was built on a volcano because the rock was there. The tenements grew 13 stories tall because there was nowhere else to go. The fog gave its name to a dessert that was nothing like the fog. Sweetie Sandy forgot about his sweets and created something new. In that combination of necessity and accident and stubborn attention to simple ingredients, a food culture was born that has shaped kitchens far beyond the grey volcanic city where it all began. Go check your kitchen now. Find your shortbread, your tablet, your Scotch eggs. Think about where they came from. Think about Alexander Ferguson, forgetting a tray of sweets and retiring a rich man. Think about Lady Grizzel Bailey writing down her recipe for tablet in her Edinburgh household book 300 years ago. The food in your cupboard carries more history than the packaging admits. And now, finally, you know the story behind it. If this opened your eyes to what Edinburgh put on your plate, hit like, share this with someone who loves food history, and subscribe so you never miss another deep dive like this one. Thanks for watching. Stay curious, stay hungry, and keep rising.